So this guy writes me this message. He says, I met this girl a month ago. She showed high interest from the beginning. After a brief conversation, she created a situation to see me again by showing up in a place she knew I would be at. That's always a good sign. When women are starting to try to preemptively see you, that means that they're being motivated to go after you. And as I always say, if she's chasing you, she can't be replacing you. Continuing, he says, let's see, the day after she messaged me on Instagram about having a coffee, it ended up being wine. We had a great date. She was all over me, doing almost all the talking. We ended in my place. However, the hookup wasn't great. I was a bit drunk and she was still on that time of the month, which is a big turnoff for me. So it wasn't my best performance. She seemed understanding and still sent me I had a great time with you text the following day. So lots to unpack just in this first paragraph, but the fact that they went back to the place, fantastic. But here's where you got to let the big head overthink the little head, right? You got to ask yourself the question, just because a hookup situation has been set up, does that mean this is the opportune time to do that? Because those first hookups, guys, I'm telling you, women put a lot of judgment on that first hookup in terms of if they're going to feel enough chemistry with you to want to do stuff again. And so even if the woman is suggesting, hey, let's go back to whatever place, you still got to look at everything that's going on and decide ultimately if, based on the current scenario, if you're going to be able to give a performance in the bed that's going to make her want to have future hookups with you. Because if not, whether it was her fault or your fault for it not working out as good as it could have, the blame's going to be on you for not taking lead of the situation. So in this case, when they got to the place, he was drunk. One, guys, really, when you go on these first, second, third dates, you need to be in control of your entire autonomy. So that means that do not overdrink and do not get buzz drunk. I know you're thinking, if I get a little buzz and she gets a little buzz, then it's going to be easier to hook up. I need you to get to the place where you can be self-confident enough to be able to have a hookup happen without you having to be inebriated. Because then you have things like this happen where you're, aside from the other things going on, you're not going to be at your best and your stuff might decide to, hey, I'm a little buzzed and I don't want to work today. So just saying, try to be as sober as possible. Maybe only have one drink versus like enough to get you drunk. Just saying. So that happened. And then it was that time of the month for her. Now, hey, we've all been in those, well, some of us have been in those scenarios where things are happening and maybe at the time that you guys are about to do some stuff, she wasn't quite at the point where that time of the month had started. And sometimes hooking up can get that going. Hey, I've been there. I get it. It can be freak out. But if you know ahead of time that she's already doing that and you still decide to proceed and go ahead, then yeah, it's going to kind of be a bad time. You're probably going to be a little bit squeamish. She's going to be all in her head about, oh my gosh, it's that time of the month. I hope that I'm not, and it's not going to be enjoyable for her. And we want that first time with you and her to be enjoyable. It ain't got to be like the best hookup she's ever had, but it's got to at least be enjoyable and allow her to see that, oh, this could be better later on. If that doesn't happen, then what can start to happen is she starts to realize, oh, that hookup wasn't great. Maybe it won't be great later. And it'd be great if women could give us the benefit of the doubt off of that first performance. The reality is, especially for hot women that probably regularly have guys coming to them, it could be a one and done. And she's like, this wasn't good enough for me. I'm on to the next thing. All right. So he says, we briefly met 2 more times, but there was no chance to make out. She even started bringing up ideas of visiting her place where there was a family/friends gathering, but I cordially refused, mentioning I would prefer to meet just her, which she understood. And that's great. I'm glad this guy did not take the bait of trying to see friends and family after only 1, maybe 2 dates, because that is way too early for you guys to be meeting up with friends and family. It can cause them to get in her head early on and make judgments about you that could affect how she feels about you. And we don't want that happening. So the less interference you can have in the beginning, the better. So he says, this whole time I wasn't over pursuing, just focused on myself and letting her initiate contact. So then he says, she suddenly got sick, making the whole thing weird as she was having symptoms, suggesting it could be an STD. We got tested, negative results, and it seems she just had a urine infection. I made the mistake of visiting her while she was sick and ended up meeting the father and the brother. And even though the vibes were nice, it felt too quick. Well, to be fair, you didn't know that her family is going to be at the hospital. I would say, as weird as it sounds to say, like, I know you're trying to show that you care about this woman early on, but doing something like visiting her in the hospital, you got to think about and it's not the worst thing in the world, just, because some women would be very, very appreciative of that. I'm just trying to give you, I go based on probability, right? Like the probability of the action that you're doing being more helpful in terms of attracting her or less, right? So you got to think about not just the visiting part, you got to think about how she's thinking about it. You're taking time out of your seemingly busy day to try to go and see her because she got sick, right? That is something that a boyfriend would do, and you guys aren't yet at the boyfriend-girlfriend stage. So now you're doing actions that are indicative of a boyfriend, which can signal to her that you're already thinking of her in that light. And as I always say, if she is not there with you yet, then that is an action that's going to make her feel like this is now being forced into a relationship situation. The better thing to do would to have been just made a phone call. Hey, just wanted to check to see how you are. That would have been enough of an action to let her know that you care, but not so much that you're sacrificing your time and energy to go see her. And it sucks that it's got to be that way, guys. I find, honestly, it's like the effort you show in the beginning should be you're asking her out and you're showing her a good time. Anything beyond that starts to feel like boyfriend territory, and it starts to feel like unearned behavior. Women want to earn the extras that you're going to throw in a relationship. And too many guys are trying to do the extras early on in an attempt to try to stand out. But all it does is make a woman feel like she's being forced into a relationship and that it's moving too fast. All right. Anyway, he said, and then meeting the family there too, like the fact that the father and the brother were there, like I've already talked about meeting family early on. Yeah, that doesn't help the situation. So then he says, I also messed up by staying overnight because we didn't hook up as she was still sick. So yeah, you trying to do the whole, these are all boyfriend actions. You're going to see her at the hospital. You're meeting the family now. You're staying the night with her after like one date and a couple, you said 2 more times you guys met up. So we'll say 3 dates. You're already doing this. And I know in the movies we see like, oh, I was the guy like overextended himself for the girl. And by date 3, they were already in love and saying, I love you and this and that. That's just not on average how it works in the real world. And in the real world, you don't get any punishment if you're not doing those things. Like you could possibly not get punished for doing those things, but there's a high probability you will. You don't get punished for not doing those things early on. If you were the boyfriend, you would, but you're not the boyfriend. And most women have an understanding of the difference between what a guy's going to do for her when he's the boyfriend versus what's acceptable to do in the dating phase. So anyway, he says, next morning, I felt strange, like I knew I made a mistake and wasn't feeling very confident, rightfully so. He says, I was a bit quiet and aloof. She picked up on it. After 2 days, I initiated contact, suggesting to go for a hike, which she agreed to. I could feel she was different and more distant. We had a nice hike and some interesting, deep conversations about life, which even I enjoyed and felt created mutual connection. Maybe weren't the best to rekindle the spark. Exactly. And here's the thing, because many of you guys are thinking, okay, and I see this on like, I watched like The Bachelor, Bachelorette, all these shows, Married at First Sight, all these things where everybody's talking about, well, if you want to build a connection, you got to talk about deep stuff. You got to go into like, the traumas of your childhood and then what really motivates you and drives you. And these are the things that are supposed to connect. And it's not that you can't do those things, but to his point, like, those aren't necessarily things that are going to spark arousal in her. Like her hearing about your traumatic childhood, she might feel empathy for you, but she might not feel a romantic connection or feel sexually attracted to you when you talk about that stuff, right? Because in those early days of dating, she's just trying to have a good time. Can this guy show me a good time? Can I hang out with him and be able to make and feel like we're starting to build something towards like a romantic relationship? And you bringing in trauma and serious subjects only takes away from the fun of that. Now, as a woman has more fun with you, she'll start to say, this guy seems really cool. He's fun. He's vibrant. But now I want to get to know deeper parts of him. And it's her being able to go to you and ask those questions and seek out those questions that will make her more attractive. You just giving it freely, that's going to chase more women away than you want, So anyway, he says, I tried to get closer and kiss her, to which she went on to say she wasn't currently feeling it and didn't want to force things. I reacted in a stoic way, saying, that's all good, acting as nothing happened. She seemed insecure and a bit confused about me standing my ground and being non-reactive. Well, I think that could be part of it. I mean, ultimately, if that's a situation that's happening, then you shouldn't really worry so much about like what that is in terms of what she's feeling like. But ultimately, recognize that you guys don't really need to be projecting onto the person you're dating what you think they're feeling. The reality is she's probably thinking or feeling things that you're not thinking or feeling at all. But when you put out stuff like this, or you say, oh, I thought she was being distant, then what that means is that you're feeling that she's getting distant. And so you're going to not project out that you're thinking and feeling that. And it's going to cause her to also then feel that way. It's like reflecting back, you know? So you got to be mindful of that. He says, on the way back while sitting on a bus, she got closer to me and rested her head on my shoulder for a while, showing affection. I invited her over. She said no. She hugged me and said to stay in touch. Oh, it's not sounding good. So basically, it's like you can see the level of light she has starting to decline. But why is that? Because again, this guy was doing a little too much, a little too soon. He was overextending himself. He was making himself available to her when she got sick, which she didn't really want. And now they're having all these deep conversations. And these aren't necessarily bad things to do, but you got to look at the difference between what's good in a relationship versus what's good during the dating phase. And it's just, he didn't have the knowledge of that, you know? So in terms of this right now, he's saying, she hugged me and said, he said, I won't contact unless she does. So far, nothing after one day. For the next weeks, she will be away traveling. So I would say this, during the course of her travels, like you guys are not in a relationship. So if you guys are to have communication, I'd let her reach out. I'd wait to see if she gets back and decides to touch up with you. And if she does, then it's fantastic. And if not, then it is what it is. At best, I'd say if you know when she's getting back in town, try to hit her up one more time and say, hey, glad that you're back in town. Wanted to see if you're available for a date. This is Nat. Like, let's go out and do that, you know? But you know, it's one of those things. It's like a lesson learned. Like these are unfortunately the bumps on the road that come along with dating. And that's a good thing because you'll know, okay, based on this scenario, I know now not to do these various things if I'm trying to get with a woman, right? So he asked a few questions. He says, did I mess up or she might still come back? Here's what I found. I found that when women pull away, if you acquiesce to that and say, you know what, she's allowed to pull away, maybe this isn't the time to be in contact with her. I find that if you're not being overbearing about it, women will start to second guess and question like, but why isn't he hitting me up? Like, was something wrong with me? Was he trying to get rid of me the whole time? Or maybe I was too harsh on him and now he's afraid to get in contact with me. And if they have those thoughts, the fact that you're staying away and the fact that you're not pestering her, it's giving her the chance to decide if she wants to move along with you. So if she does reach out, that's your incentive to be able to ask her back out and just know, okay, now that I'm going back out with her again, don't do these things to push her away again, you know, because what you don't want to do is think, oh my God, I got her back. I'm back to like doing excessive stuff. Don't do that. Like let women that you're dating earn your extra time, attention, and care. If you just do that, and I know as guys, it's hard because we want so bad to do for the people we care about, but you got to realize on your end, you do not actually know this person after 2 or 3 dates. Men, we think we do, we don't. So she's taken her 2 to 3 months to do her due diligence. I suggest you do the same and not rush this process, and you will find it will work out better for you in the long run. All right. Then he said some other stuff about we're both artists. We have similar visions about the future. She has a family of artists. She's a great pick. She's unexpected. But like guys will typically do this thing where they say, oh, she'd be such a great pick because X, Y, and Z. I will tell you now, you could be a guy that is an artist and she could be an artist, and you guys could not match up because she has a bad attitude. She has a traumatic family past. You have different political views. Like, this is why you can't just go in on, oh, we'd be so great together because of this 1 or 2 things. You need 3 months to date this person to see the totality of, or a good portion of the totality of what they're about before you bring in those feelings. That's why I tell you guys, it's better to treat dating like a research project versus like, I already like her and I'm going to go and look for signs that proves that I should like her. Like that's a horrible way to date. You need to be objective with every single woman. I don't care if you're dating a horrible 4 or a knockout 10. It's just skin. You need to go and dive deeper into who they actually are as a person, their life, their backstory, and really see if you guys connect in a way that's going to be beneficial to a relationship. Because her being an artist means nothing if she comes home and yells at you. You know? So just saying, do a bit more due diligence and you'll have better results. Hopefully, Guy, that helps you out.
You's a bad boy, but you can't stop, won't stop. You a high earning, high value, high class man. You a high earning, high value, high class man. You a high earning, high value, high class man. You a high class man. You a high class man. You a high